$20 billion shipwreck found. Lost treasure of the San Jose. A $20 billion shipwreck finally identified after 300 years. More than 3 centuries after it sank in a ferry battle off the coast of Colombia. The legendary Spanish galleon San Jose, often called the Holy Grail of shipwrecks, has finally revealed its secret. New underwater images and archaeological analysis have confirmed the identity of the shipwreck, which carried a treasure now estimated to be worth an astonishing $20 billion. Now let's get into the story in detail on this AI podcast.
You've probably heard the stories, maybe seen the headlines over the years. The San Jose.
Oh yeah, the legendary Holy Grail of shipwreck.
Exactly. Lost for, what, over 300 years? Somewhere down in the Caribbean.
Vanished. But the big news now, based on the sources we're looking at, is that its identity has finally been confirmed. Really solid evidence this time.
And the reason it's so legendary, the treasure, the sources put the estimate at just staggering numbers.
Yeah, something like $20 billion. That's billion with a B.
Mm-hmm.
Gold, silver, emeralds, you name it. Unbelievable cargo.
It really is mind-boggling. And the way it went down, the sources say June 8th, 1708.
That's the date. Caught in an ambush by the British Navy near Baru off Cartagena, Colombia.
Right. And this wasn't just some isolated pirate skirmish. It was part of the War of the Spanish Succession, a massive conflict.
Absolutely. And the human cost.
Yeah.
Terrible. Sources mentioned about 600 people on board.
And only 11 survived.
Just 11. A real tragedy.
So Colombia announced a discovery back in 2015, but there was always that question mark, wasn't there? Was it really the San Jose?
Exactly. There was debate, speculation. Definitive proof was, well, missing. Until now.
And the key seems to be these new images from ROVs.
Remotely operated vehicles, yeah.
Yeah.
Sent down nearly 2,000 feet.
Yeah.
1,970 feet, the sources say.
So deep. And these images are high resolution.
Crystal clear, apparently. Enough to see specific details on the seabed.
Like what? What did they find that sealed the deal?
Well, the sources highlight a few key things. Specific silver coins called cobs.
Cobs.
Yeah, sort of irregular-shaped coins. And these were dated 1707, minted in Lima. That's very specific.
Wow. What else?
Chinese porcelain from a particular period, the Kendishi era. And bronze cannons, some also dated.
Sounds like finding a time capsule.
Pretty much. Those details together were the smoking gun, so to speak.
Okay, so that's what we're going to do in this deep dive. We'll, unpack the sources, figure out how they made this positive ID.
Right. Look at the evidence itself, what these ROVs actually saw down there.
And then tackle the really complex part. Who actually owns this incredible find? Because there are a lot of claims.
Yeah, that's where it gets really interesting and complicated. It makes you think, what does finding this ship finally actually mean today beyond just the history or the money?
Okay, let's unpack this. So the big challenge, as you said, wasn't just finding a wreck. It was proving this was the San Jose.
Precisely. And these high-res images from the ROVs were crucial. The sources really emphasized the artifacts seen in situ on the seabed.
Right, untouched for centuries. You mentioned the silver coins, the cobs. Tell us more about why they were so important.
Well, these cobs, or maquinas, they weren't like modern coins. They were hand-struck, often kind of crude looking.
Okay.
But finding ones clearly dated 1707 and bearing the Lima mint mark, that's incredibly specific information.
I read that one archaeologist, Daniela Vargas Ariza, pointed out that these specific coins, 1707 Lima, are like a direct fingerprint.
Exactly. They point to a ship operating on that specific Spanish trade route, the Terra Firma, carrying treasure from Peru towards the Caribbean in that exact time frame.
Which links South America to Spain via places like Cartagena.
Right. And historical records show the San Jose is really the only known Spanish galleon matching that description on that route, lost in 1708.
So it narrows it down incredibly.
Dramatically.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just the coins. There was the Chinese porcelain, too.
From the Kangxi period.
Yes, 1662 to 1722. So that fits perfectly with the early 18th century time frame. It backs up the coin dates.
Okay, so multiple lines of evidence pointing the same way. And the cannons.
The bronze cannons, yeah. Some had dates on them, too, going back as far as 1565.
Which probably relates to when the ship was built or maybe armed.
Likely, yes. So you put it all together. The cannon suggests the age of the vessel itself. The porcelain confirms that the general area it was sailing. And then, bam, the 1707 coins pinpoint the specific voyage and origin.
It's pretty conclusive based on what the sources are reporting.
The confluence of evidence is very strong, yes. It really solidifies the ID.
And just thinking about the ship itself, 62-gun Galleon. It was the flagship, right?
Essentially, yes. leading a treasure fleet out of Portobello in Panama, heading back to Spain. Absolutely loaded.
Full of wealth gathered from all over South America.
Its sinking wasn't just a loss of treasure. It was a major strategic hit for Spain during that war, a blow to their finances and naval power.
Control of those trade routes was everything back then.
Absolutely. Which makes this find resonate even more today. But now that we know it's the San Jose, the big question looming is, who gets the treasure? Or maybe who should get it?
Right. The historical mystery might be solved, but the modern-day disputes are just heating up.
And the sources lay out a really tangled web of claims. It's quite the situation.
It seems like a legal minefield.
That's a good way to put it. First off, you've got a U.S. company, Galleon.
Okay.
They claim they actually found the wreck site way back in 1981. And they apparently had some kind of deal with the Colombian government back then for a share.
But Colombia disputes that now.
Yes, that agreement is heavily contested, so that's one layer.
Okay, who else?
Well, Spain. Spain argues that since the San Jose was a Spanish Navy vessel, a warship flying its flag, it remains Spanish sovereign property.
Even though it sank centuries ago in what are now Colombian waters.
That's their argument, based on international law principles regarding state vessels, sovereign immunity, essentially.
Okay, so a U.S. company and Spain. Anyone else?
Yes, and this has a whole other very significant dimension. An indigenous group from Bolivia, the Caracara Nation.
What's their claim?
Their argument, according to the sources, is that the gold and silver on the San Jose was originally extracted from their ancestral lands.
Using forced labor.
Using forced indigenous labor under the Spanish colonial system. So they argue the treasure, or at least a significant part of it, rightfully belongs to them as restitution for that historical injustice.
Wow. Okay, that's a powerful claim based on the origin of the wealth itself.
Absolutely. So you have these competing narratives. Commercial salvage rights, state sovereignty, and historical justice claims from an indigenous perspective.
And all the while, the wreck sits in Colombian waters. What's Colombia's stance?
Colombia considers it part of its national cultural heritage, discovered in its territory. They're the ones who announced the find in 2015, released the new footage.
And President Petro mentioned wanting to raise it.
Yes, there's talk potentially attempting to raise the wreck by 2026, which is, a hugely complex and expensive undertaking itself, technically speaking.
So you've got history, cutting edge, deep sea tech, international law, ethics, colonial legacies. It's all colliding right there on the seabed.
It really is. It forces us to confront these layers. It's not just finding gold. It's about what that gold represents, how it got there, and who has a rightful claim to its legacy.
Definitely puts a different spin on the whole treasure hunt idea. That past isn't really past, is it?
Not when it's worth $20 billion and carries so much history.
So, recapping our deep dive here. We've seen how the sources point to very specific artifacts found deep underwater, nearly 2,000 feet down.
Right. Those 1707 silver cobs from Lima, the Chinese porcelain from the Kangxi era, the dated bronze cannons.
All captured by these amazing ROV images. And together, they provided that crucial, undeniable proof. After centuries, it's confirmed. This is the San Jose.
The huge moment for maritime archaeology and deep-sea exploration. But like we discussed, identifying it is one thing.
Dealing with what it represents is another. That potential $20 billion treasure immediately brings all these complex claims to the forefront.
We talked about the main ones highlighted in the sources. Galleon, the U.S. salvage company, with their disputed 1981 claim.
Then Spain asserting sovereign ownership over its naval vessel.
And the Caracara indigenous community from Bolivia, arguing the treasure's origins lie in forced labor on their lands.
And of course Colombia, where the wreck lies, viewing it as national heritage and maybe even planning to raise it.
It shows that understanding this story isn't just about pirates and gold doubloons,
Right.
The source is connected to huge historical themes. The War of the Spanish Succession, the realities of colonialism and resource extraction.
The incredible leaps in technology that let us even see these things now.
And these really tangled questions of international law, cultural heritage, and ethics. Who owns the past, especially when it's found at the bottom of the ocean?
It really does highlight that tension, doesn't it? Between claims based on finding something, claims based on original state ownership, and claims based on how the wealth was created in the first place through exploitation.
Exactly. Which leads us to a final thought for you listening to sort of chew on. Given these really different types of historical claims that the sources bring up, the nation state, the indigenous group citing injustice, the commercial entity, how should we as a global community think about who owns deep sea finds like the San Jose? And what does that desire, the plan mentioned by Colombia to physically raise the wreck, actually signify in this whole complicated data about its past and its legacy?
If a $20 billion treasure was found today, who do you think has the rightful claim? Don't forget to comment it. Thanks.